Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap up. I ended up reading only 8 books in August, of which I actually DNF'd 2, but I'm counting them as read because I read like a significant amount. So I only finished 6 full books, which is kind of tragic. I was hoping to read more, but didn't happen. Also, as you might see, I'm filming in front of a different background, just like this plain white wall, because it's actually late afternoon and the sun would be right in my face where I to film where I usually film, which is over here. So you'll have to do with this. I hope it's okay. So now let's take a look at my TBR. As you might know, I did a 2-month TBR for the summer, and that was 10 books that I wanted to read in those 2 months. I ended up only reading 5 of them. Here's the picture. You can see not that many. I didn't do that well, honestly. I think it's not that good of an idea to like challenge myself at TBRs because I'll just fail and that doesn't feel good. So going forward, as you might see in my fall TBR, I'm trying to put more books on my TBR that I actually want to read. Like, it's not like you have to read this book, but it's like, oh, I actually want to read this book. That's like the whole idea of a TBR actually, but it kind of got twisted in my head and I didn't do it properly. So this time around, gonna try to do better. Let's do some stats real quick because I'm already talking for too long. For ratings, I have 0 1 stars, 4 2 stars, 1 3 star, and 2 4 stars, and 0 5 stars. So really bad month in terms of ratings. I read 3 thrillers, 2 contemporary novels, 1 fiction, 1 mystery, and 1 sci-fi novel. And in total, I read 2,606 pages, which means 84 a day. And the books had an average length of 326 pages. 6 of the books were set in the US, 1 in the UK, and 1 in space. All of the books I read this month were by authors that were actually new to me. 7 of them were female and 1 was male. Also, all of the books were hyped. None were obscure. For release years, I have 2 released in 2019 and 6 between 2010 and 2018. And then finally, 5 adult, 2 young adult, and 1 new adult book. And that's it for the stats, and now let's jump right into the reviews. So the first book I DNF'd and didn't rate was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I'm so sad to report that this just wasn't for me. I know this is so popular. Everybody and their mother loves this, and I was convinced I would too. I read almost 200 pages of it, and it just wasn't working. Don't get me wrong, I love the concept. It's so cool as a concept. It's about basically several years, decades, centuries, I don't know, in the future. Earth has become inhospitable. We can't live on Earth anymore, basically. So we've all moved into the galaxy, and there's like, as humans, and then there's a bunch of other alien races that obviously inhabit other planets. And there's this whole like intergalactic society thing happening, which I think is really interesting because it allows the book to discuss very important and interesting topics such as like interspecies racism, which would probably be speciesism then, taking the idea of like race and like different cultural backgrounds and stuff like that we are faced with on our planet, and like kind of stepping it up a notch to like this interspecies level and like examining how interspecies relationships would work, like how some people would have to adapt, how some species would be considered inferior or superior, how some species have completely different ways of communication, and like some, for example, some can actually make sounds. They with one another, they just communicate via thought. So they had to develop these devices to translate thought into sound so that they could communicate with humans, like this sort of interpreting happening. And it's fascinating. I am so fascinated by all of that. Unfortunately, the book is so slow that I just never wanted to pick it up. The pacing is genuinely glacial. We follow the crew of a spaceship, and their job basically is to punch holes through space to make travel easier. I don't even know what the plot is. Like, I'm almost 200 pages in and nothing has happened. And it's so glacial, and like I wish it had more substance in that direction. Like, as I say, I love the concept, I love the idea, I love the world. I just can't read it. I just can't get myself to care to read this. My second DNF, I did give a reading to, and I did feel a little bit more negatively about, and that is Black Iris by Leah Reader. This is a dark contemporary novel that, for some reason, I thought was a thriller. It's not. It's literally just, I don't know, I would call it tragedy porn. So the book follows this 17-year-old girl called Delaney, whose mother commits suicide at the beginning of the book, and later it's sort of revealed that she, like throughout the book, it's sort of hinted at that she had mental health problems, as does Delaney. She's drinking, she's taking drugs, she's being very promiscuous, kind of just to fill a hole in her life. And it's also sort of hinted at that she had a horrible experience that sort of traumatized her. We don't know what until later on, but yeah, so she's seeking revenge for that elusive thing that happened to her. So I think when she starts going to college and she befriends this couple slash friends, I don't know, they have a weird relationship, named Blythe and Armin, and she kind of falls in love with both of them, and they have like this weird love triangle that's simultaneously like a polygamous relationship. I don't understand. I didn't understand the dynamic, to be perfectly honest. I didn't understand why they were also attracted to each other, but that's a different story. So it's about a few different things. It's about Delaney figuring out her sexuality, which to me was the most interesting part of the whole book. It's about her trying to get revenge and like struggling with relationships and generally her mental health in all regards. So as a concept, again, the book isn't bad. I think it could have been very interesting and very well written, but oh my God, the writing is so obnoxious and pretentious. Like, genuinely, everything needs to be described in like the most flowery words. Like, the most mundane things are blown so out of proportion, like over dramatized. Like, it's actually exhausting to read because every single sentence is so intense. Like, it shoots way above the mark. Like, it's genuinely, or like past the mark, I don't even know. It's like above and beyond pretentious. And it was just really exhausting to read. Like, I actually enjoyed myself at the beginning because it's not badly written. Like, the author knows how to write, but like, it's just, the language she uses isn't, you're not really able to read it for a long time before you just need to go to sleep, genuinely. But what really ruined the book for me and like caused me to put it down is genuinely that I feel like this book is romanticizing mental illness and alcoholism and drug abuse, because it employs such beautiful language and describes all these moments of like, oh, I'm so high on drugs, like in such beautiful terms. Kind of that's the only thing that adds depth to her character is her misery. And I just can't get behind that. Like, I don't enjoy that. I don't think that's a good message to send. Like, it's almost like the book is making her mental illness Delaney's most defining characteristic, and elevating her to another plane above the mundane, normal, like neurotypical, healthy humans. Like, that's not what mental illness is. It does, in a way, I guess, set you apart from other humans, but not necessarily in a good way. No one wants to be mentally ill. And like, I don't want to sound like a bitch, because obviously Delaney went through a lot and I do sympathize with her for that, but she's also taking 0 steps to improve her life and to get out of it. She's indulging in all of these like negative impulses and the negativity in her life. She's literally feeding into it and stoking it and making it worse and worse and worse. At some point, I just can't give you any more sympathy, because it's just taking and taking and taking and actually not changing anything. And you're not improving. There's 0 character development either. It's just frustrating to read this book, genuinely. Didn't enjoy it. And that's why I had to put it down, because I was like, this isn't going anywhere. It's just more of the same. More self-indulgent, self-pitying, woe is me, I don't know, misery party. That's why I'm calling it tragedy porn. Oh, and there's also a ton of actual porn. Like, the sex scenes between the 3 main characters, like, everything is sexualized. Like, every little moment is so hypersexualized, and I'm like, I get it, you're teenagers, hormones and stuff, but like, please get to some semblance of a plot here, because there isn't any. It's just self-pity, sex, self-pity, drugs, sex, self-pity, drugs, alcohol, sex. Like, that's all this book consists of, and I'm just like, oh, I can't deal with it anymore. I don't know if it gets better, it might, but I had to put it down and put a stop to that because it was draining my mental energy, genuinely. I'm really sorry I had to move again because my camera was heating up because it was literally standing in the light, like in the direct sunlight. Oh my god. Alright, now that the DNFs are out of the way, we can talk about the books I actually finished. My first 2-star is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I did an in-depth rant review on this, which I really enjoyed filming, and I really enjoyed reading your guys' comments on it as well, because so many of you added many more things that also bothered me, but that I just like didn't register as annoying, which is bad for a book review. Like, it doesn't make me look too good, but that's okay. I totally agree with you, by the way, like that the book is really bad. So read the review. There's a spoilery section, but also a non-spoilery section at the beginning. So either way, I recommend watching the video. I really didn't get too lucky with thrillers this month, because my other 2-star read is also a thriller, and that's An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This book follows a woman that kind of cheats her way into a psychological study because she hears that you can get money for it. So she participates, but then is like chosen by the psychiatrist, like singled out to extend the study, and it gets more and more personal and like actually overlaps into her real life. There wasn't like any one glaringly big issue I had with the book. The main thing is that it was just absolutely boring. It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, and there's never any real plot twists. It doesn't get suspenseful or that exciting. A lot of it expects you to just suspend your disbelief because it's super ridiculous. Like, no one would take the actions really that the main characters did a lot of the times. It honestly just felt like a very cliche and cookie cutter type thriller. Like, even just like the inclusion of a therapist or a psychiatrist having an ulterior motive behind doing a study and like that going out of control is like so overused. I can't do it anymore. Add to that the main character is also quite unlikable, and it just boils down to a super like boring, lackluster, typical, like nothing special type of thriller. So I gave it 2 stars. It wasn't badly written, like the writing itself isn't bad, but just for a thriller, it didn't grip me. It didn't do what it was supposed to do, and so I can't really give it any higher rating than that. My 1 3-star was The Moon and More by Sarah Dessen. This is a YA contemporary book, and I wanted to pick it up because a friend recommended it, and also I wanted to read something by Sarah Dessen finally, and I think it's just too late for me. Like, I'm too old. I've outgrown this particular style of contemporary because it was just really underwhelming in a lot of ways. The book follows Emmeline, who lives in a small beachside town. She's lived there all her life. All her family lives there. Her boyfriend is there, but she really wants more, like go beyond it and experience more of life. And then one summer, a boy visits from New York, and she breaks up with her boyfriend, starts a relationship with him literally on the same day. And then basically it's just torn between her hometown and life here and people here and like the great far beyond in New York and stuff like that. So it's a very standard setup. It's a very standard story, to be honest. And like the characters are all feel really flat as well. Like they have like one personality trait and that's about it. It's also a very quiet book. Like if you want a subdued, quiet, wholesome contemporary, this is probably a book for you, but to me just felt like nothing was happening. The main character especially is a very passive person. Like things just happen to her. She never has to make any decisions. Whenever she's like conflicted about something, a minute later it'll just resolve itself. So there's no big conflict really. Everything just falls into place. I feel like if you need a palate cleanser in between very intense books, this might actually be a good choice for that. But other than that, I really, it's just nothing special, to be honest. Okay guys, I'm dumb as shit. I forgot a book. So I'm inserting this right here. Basically, I also read You Go Bernadette by Maria Semple. See, this is why I don't read ebooks, because I forget about them in my wrap-ups. It's the worst. Okay, this is a book about a woman who disappears, basically, from the surface of the earth when she has promised her 14-year-old daughter that she would take her to the Antarctica over the winter holidays. And like a day before they're supposed to leave, she disappears, and her husband and her daughter are like, what is going on? Where did she go? So her daughter compiles a file of different pieces of information, like articles, emails, other notes that are relevant to Bernadette's disappearance. And she tries to reconstruct basically what happened leading up to her disappearance and where she might have gone. The book is very much satire, and I think it wouldn't be up everyone's alley necessarily. I mean, the characters are all very unlikable. Like, Bernadette has an assistant, an online assistant in India that she pays like 75 cents an hour to. And she has her like book all of her appointments, like call her dentist and stuff like that. Like, it's insane. She's a very weird person. But it kind of adds to the story because you never know what she's gonna get up to. She's genuinely crazy, and she does all these weird things, and she's completely unpredictable. And that's kind of why you can't actually tell where she might have gone. Like, she genuinely could be anywhere, and it's quite funny. It's not laugh out loud funny, really, but it's definitely entertaining, and it keeps you on your toes because you don't know where the story is going. And I really enjoyed it. I also really enjoy what's her name? B, the 14-year-old girl whose perspective it's kind of written from. Yeah, she's a cool character, and just overall, I think it's a good book. Like, I'm excited to see the film. I think has it come out yet? Is it coming out soon? I don't know, but I'm excited to check that out because I really actually enjoyed the book, and I gave it 3.5 stars, I think. All right, back to your regularly scheduled program now. Then second to last, and my first 4-star is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is my first Ruth Ware book ever, and I really enjoyed this one. In this book, we follow a woman that is a childcare professional. She works at a nursery, but she wants to change jobs. So she answers this ad for a live-in nanny, for a position of a live-in nanny, where she would have to basically move in with a family and like take care of the kids. So she goes to the job interview, and it turns out it's this huge mansion in Scotland. They have a smart home, which means everything is like controlled with like apps and Wi-Fi and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. And the salary is really, really good, which is the main thing that draws her to it. And she ends up getting the job. The only thing is that previous nannies have always quit very quickly because they claim that the house is haunted. So that's obviously a little interesting. And then basically the book actually starts off with this main character convicted of murdering one of the children in the family. And she is writing this book as a letter to a lawyer trying to explain her side of the story. I think it's a really interesting setup. Like, it just automatically is like, oh wait, that's interesting. Like, which child dies? How does it die? What happens in this house? Is it really haunted? And stuff like that. And honestly, retrospectively, I probably should give this a lower rating because aside from the writing and the atmosphere, it's not that special of a thriller, but I absolutely enjoyed myself. Like, I read this in a day. I stayed up, I think, until like 3 a.m. just reading this. I was scared out of my mind. I was so creeped out by everything happening. And the atmosphere really drew me. It kept me wanting more, basically. And yes, when the final thing is revealed, like, it's not that special, and I feel like the book had a lot more potential. Like, it could have done so much more with this entire premise, especially with the house being a smart home and like the technology aspect of it. Like, it really reminded me of Black Mirror in the setup, because I feel like you could have done so much with it, and it didn't go quite as far as I'd hoped. And yes, I probably should lower my rating to like a 3-star. I just love the experience of reading this. And I don't know what is more important, like if the end product is the most important thing, or if the journey is the goal, basically. Because I read not to have read a book, but because I enjoy the act of reading it. So I really enjoyed myself reading this book, and it's not flawless by any means, but it's a solid thriller. It's very suspenseful, and if you don't mind a letdown plot twist or like a letdown ending of a book, but still want an atmospheric read and like really appreciate the way that a book is written, like I highly recommend this one because it's definitely very atmospheric and very creepy. And then finally, my favorite book of the month that was the most surprising of all was truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. Oh my god, I was obsessed. I read this also, I think in a day. Couldn't put it down. It's genuinely amazing. In this book, it follows Stevie, who moves to this fancy boarding school basically for super talented kids. The reason she gets to go is not because she's any particular talent or is like super genius level smart, is because she's a detective. And she's very interested in detective stories, and she's very like perceptive and good at detecting, I guess. This particular boarding school holds a lot of interest for her because I think 100 years ago or so, a girl was actually found murdered, as well as members of the family of the founder were kidnapped and never found again. So there's like this whole mysterious story. And then now that Steve is at boarding school, actually a murder happens again. So she's trying to solve both this past mystery, but also try to find the killer in the present. And it's so well written. I love the characters. I love the suspense of it. The mystery isn't 100% revealed in this book, which I also appreciate. The mystery of the present is only halfway solved in my opinion, and the mystery of the past is not solved at all. So there's still a lot that can happen, a lot that you can like theory craft on basically. Like you can just let your mind and your imagination wander. And I just adored this book, genuinely. I think it's well written, it's creepy, it has a lot of suspense, and also the characters are super cool and I really appreciate them. I'm not sure about, I think his name is David. He's the love interest and I'm just confused by his personality, but I think things are, at the end there's a big cliffhanger, and it looks to be very interesting. He looks to be a very interesting person. I can't wait to read more about him. So actually, The Vanishing Star, the sequel, is on my TBR for the fall. So once I finish my current read, I'm definitely going to jump into it because I'm excited to read more about this mystery and see where it goes. And oh my god, I already found a Reddit thread that is like all about theories for the second book, or for the third book I should say. So I have to read the second one before I can read that thread, but I'm very excited. I hope I enjoy the sequel as much as this one because I genuinely love it. Like, my expectations were blown out of the water considering this is a YA mystery, so highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out yet. I loved it. Oh my god, can't wait to read the sequel. Please give it a try if you haven't already. And after a million years, it seems we finally reached the end of this wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought of the books that I mentioned today and what you read in the month of August. I hope to see you back very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!